question later.
Terry.
Thank you.
So August will be the 3rd.
So you need to make a motion.
Oh, go ahead.
I motion that we meet on the first and third Thursdays of every month at
Second.
7 o'clock.
7 to 9?
Starting at 7.
Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we got that out of the way. So Gabriel made this nice list. Should we talk about the nice
Yeah,
list?
so first I did want to check on the, David, did you put this on here, review the FY18 budget and priorities?
Right, which is what that list is all about.
Okay, so that is, got it. Yeah, so to catch Terry up again, I made, this is the list that was circulated by the select board for the select board members, and they invited FinCom as well to prioritize the big areas that they saw opportunities for the next year or beyond, really. I just kind of spruced it up a little bit in terms of formatting, but didn't change any language whatsoever. So thought that we could have a substantive conversation about, as a committee, kind of where we want to come down on these. We're certainly all entitled to, our own rankings and things, but I thought it would be strong if we could approach the select board, and especially for the tri-board meeting, and kind of have some kind of consensus as a committee on what to prioritize. So has everyone gotten a chance to look over this list when it was first circulated?
I
know,
did
Tommy,
look
you
at
looked
it,
it
and I put my rankings on, but I have a question about, starting with public safety here. So before town meeting, everyone was all concerned, I think everyone on this board was concerned with the staffing of the fire department, right? And that's one of my sort of highest priorities. But what's recently been happening in the select board meetings is that now there's discussion about where the fire substation is going to go, because there's a problem with building on the original site, and now they're thinking about this other piece of property which they might buy, which was a surprise to me, because in the last budget I didn't see any money for buying property.
There isn't. We already failed once. Why did they say they can't be built where it is now?
Because what's the name of that test that they did?
The geotech test revealed that there's fill there that doesn't provide a firm enough foundation for the building.
So in other words, it would sink.
So they'd have to do.
So they can't bring any in?
I'm sorry?
They can't like haul fill in, make it so it's workable?
Yes, they can do it, but that comes at a cost that they hadn't budgeted for.
Yeah, like $500,000.
Kind of like the senior center?
That's another one that's going way over budget.
The geotech at the senior center is just fine. It's just that.
No, but
No,
the building keeps
money.
getting smaller because they keep.
Yeah.
So that's an issue as well.
Really?
yeah.
You know, that kind of shocks me, considering that, I don't know if you even worked for the town years ago when there was that lead paint issue there, and they did all kinds of testing.
We're talking about the North Hadley Village Hall now.
Yeah, so it's just kind of, they didn't know that then, you know what I mean? Like, from all those testings that they had done prior, that they didn't have the information before they started looking into building there.
Yeah, it's not a lead paint issue.
No, I know it's not a lead paint issue. What I'm saying is they did multiple testings for different things, and that wasn't one of them, I guess.
I guess so. I wasn't here then.
Just out in the middle of
That's
the
what I'm
baseball
saying. I
field,
don't
right?
think you were here.
Yeah.
But then again, maybe they were focused on the building and not where the ball field is. Who knows?
I
Yeah.
have no, I don't know how anybody thinks. So.
Yeah. So the other thing I heard was the cost. I think it was the same piece of property that they're interested in, if I'm right. It's that we voted on before, and that didn't, through town meeting, that didn't pass. But now it's cheaper. Am I right, David?
Well, is it up for sale again? Because we have right of first refusal on it for some
Correct.
reason.
It's up for sale. It's Chapter 61A land, so we have right of first refusal.
What does that mean, Chapter 61?
It's protected farmland for tax break, and so they pay less taxes with the promise that they would keep it in farmland.
Well, time out. If we put a fire station on it, it's not farmland. It's a fire station.
That's correct. They're going to take it out of Chapter 61A,
Isn't there a cost to
which
that?
triggers our right of first refusal. We have 120 days to exercise that right of first first refusal.
Okay, so let me ask a question. If they take it out of that protected spot, do they have to pay all the back taxes for all the years they got a tax break?
For 5-year rollback, yeah.
Mhm.
For only 5 years, so if they had it for 20 years.
Yep.
And then they can elect to roll it back and they only have to pay 5 years of back taxes?
That's the way the law is written.
That seems a bit like a racket.
Not really, because when they put it in there, those people only get a chunk of money,
No,
Just-
right?
they get a tax break.
Oh, they don't get any,
That's a different program, that's the APR
okay,
program. That's,
there you go.
that's
That's what I
permanent,
thought it was.
that's permanent protection, so they would
Mhm.
not be able to develop that.
Oh.
If it was APR land, we would not have the option of buying it. We would not have the option, if we did buy it, of putting a fire station on or any other structure.
But so,
on
so
it.
anyone who owns a farm could put it under this protected status, go merrily along for 20 generations, and then someone can
Take it out.
decide that they wanna take it out and they only have to pay 5 years of back taxes?
That's the way the law is written.
Mhm.
Okay?
Hmm.
Just wanna make sure I understand it.
Yep.
Seems like that's, a bit of a shell game, that is. Where's the farm? Oh, I don't know.
Well,
So
we
to
can't
step back
control
for,
that, but,
for process and everything. So this kind of a topic would obviously come up with the Joint Capital Planning Committee, which is gonna start picking up in July.
Yep.
I'm the liaison for that. We have a Buildings Committee, they're working with a Select Board. What has Finance Committee's role typically been in large-scale capital projects like this? And I think we should add it as an item under here, and we should decide on how much we want to be involved in these sorts of things.
Well, theoretically, every large-scale capital project comes through the capital planning process, and you would have the seat at the table there, as well as independently evaluating that project. These two projects came through the citizen petition process, so we did not see them coming up through the capital plan. They just arrived with enough signatures to place them on the warrant. You all still had the review of those two projects through both the capital plan and the finance committee process, but you didn't see them coming. You know, you should have seen these things coming 5 years out, and we should have been thinking about strategically how do we put it all together, along with all the other capital requests that the town would need to entertain.
Just for background, in your opinion, was this a fortuitous opportunity or an oversight in our capital planning
Of
for
what?
these projects for both the school and the fire?
I think,
And I ask because on the one hand, if it's an oversight in the capital planning, then I would feel that the Joint Capital Planning Committee should really be
yeah.
kind of
I think
reviewing its.
I think one of the things that I've been asking for many years is for a more robust capital plan. That we've been flying blind on a lot of the buildings, and I've made the point as strongly as I can for this cycle that we should be able to see these things coming up. We know that we have a highway garage that they need some sort of treatment. We have the Russell School that needs some sort of treatment. We still have the North Hadley Village Hall, which we're either going to do something with or sell or not. We should be seeing these things coming up. Every building has systems.
Is the planning board actually moving on those things, or are they not?
That'd be the select board. Right now, we don't have any plans on them. Every building, just take this building for example, every building has a system. Roof is one system, the HVAC is a system, the electrical panels are a system, the fire suppression is a system. We should have an evaluation of all of those, and that should be reflected in the capital plan. We should know whether we're going to be working on the HVAC system or not. And I've been disappointed that the capital plan has not reflected an assessment of those systems or the replacement schedule for
So it's
those.
always an emergency when something fails.
That's the whole thing. That's the reason why we have a capital plan, is to avoid the number of emergencies. Now, we're really good on equipment. I know, I can tell you when the snow plows need to be replaced. I can tell you when the IT stuff needs to be worked on. I can tell you when all these other processes, but we're not so good on the buildings.
And not just that, I think that we need to really work together with the CPA in some of these buildings.
Mhm.
They could be using some of this money, so when they're thinking about the buildings, let's think about, can we keep it historic?
Mhm.
This way we can use this money. Have
Mhm.
that thought in the plan.
Mhm.
So which body, the Joint Capital Planning Committee or the Select Board, really is most hands-on with the capital plan and responsible for it ultimately?
I think the capital planning committee is, even though it's created and appointed by the select board, it has representatives from the assessors, from the select board, from the finance committee, from the treasurer, town administrator, and an at-large committee member. They're the ones who really direct the capital planning for the town. And there should be a seamless tie-in with the financial management of the town for.
And then
making
from
it-
there, what's the approval process once they've developed a plan? Does it go to Select Board? Is Finance Committee in that chain?
Oh, yeah,
as
no,
well?
every article that's a capital article has finance committee recommendation, select board recommendation. And
What
But
about-
ultimately, it's the select board. who
So in the
makes
way that we
final
present,
decision.
you know, the omnibus budget to the
Yeah.
town, that's a Finance Committee, I guess, responsibility. Is the capital plan similar, or is that the Select Board's?
it's finance, the
This-
capital planning committee,
So it is okay.
yeah. They're actually supposed to make a report to the town,
Are they,
which we haven't done either. That's something we can also tighten up.
I see.
cause like North Hadley Hall, but it seems like it's just decaying away to nothing. If you wanna sell it, it's hard to sell it if it's in a little pile of sticks.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to buy a little pile of sticks.
So then does it make most sense to let these discussions,
I think all the buildings have been neglected, it's not just that one.
Well,
to let these discussions happen in the Joint Capital Planning Committee, and then with me as the liaison, the Finance Committee can be plugged in that way, and then going through the process, rather than it being kind of a work item for the Finance Committee? Does that make more sense?
yeah,
Yes.
that does.
I think with proper
And we
communication,
can run the
all
school
keep
committee
involved.
the same way.
As a practical matter, I would disagree. I would
Okay.
say that the finance committee should take a much more active role in capital planning. And the reason why I say that is capital plan sometimes feels like they're getting things at the last minute, and then they've only got a very short period of time to make major decisions about big projects. So if you can front load those kinds of decisions
Mhm.
before you're really into the crunch time of trying to put together a warrant, I think you're gonna have a better result at the other end.
Who's in the capital planning?
So the chair is Jerry Devine. He represents the select board.
Mark Kopacki, is he still there?
So Richard Grader represents the assessors. Paul McCretsky is the at-large member. He's a banker, so he's got really good handle
How
on
do you spell McClutz?
MOKRZE.
You can go on the
Yeah, I'll
town
find it.
website
All right,
and
yeah,
find
yeah.
all of that.
Yep.
Okay. So you have Linda Sanderson as a non-voting member of the committee. You got David Nixon as a non-voting member of the committee.
Yep.
You have a member of the school committee, and I don't have a name for you right now.
At a school
And then we have
committee.
Gabriel.
So we have assessors, at-large, Select Board, Finance, School, are the
Right,
five
those are
voting.
Five voting,
Then yourself and Linda as the non-voting.
that's right.
Okay. So then, with them being appointed by the Select Board, can you just elaborate more on like where the Finance Committee really fits in the oversight with the capital plan? If you want us to be more, or if we want to be more involved,
Mhm.
I'm just kind of wondering in terms of power dynamics and who's responsible for what. How much can we really, you know,
Well,
press our
so
opinions, as
I
it
think,
were?
I think it's close to, so June 30th, the capital plan is gonna be updated. Okay, so what does that really mean? It means that there's a deadline on June 30th, and on July 1st, I'm chasing departments saying, where the hell's your capital plan?
Mhm.
But I think that meeting in July 6th or July 20th, you might want to invite have a joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee, and as equals talk about what does this look like? What is the 5-year projection? Are you making progress on your capital plan, or are you just falling farther behind because things that weren't funded from prior years? I mean, I think those kinds of broad stroke assessments and evaluations. How complete is the plan? Does it cover buildings, which it doesn't right now? You know, what kind of big projects are coming up that are potentially real difficult to afford for a small town? Is there some sort of crushing obligation beyond the 5 years that we need to worry about? I think those kinds of strategic conversations would be very helpful.
Do you wanna set that up as the liaison? And we'll
Yeah.
take one of those 2 meetings and do that?
I'll work with David and Molly and the school committee to arrange that. That makes sense.
That'd be interesting to listen
Yeah.
to that. See what the focus is, because I mean, I really am curious on where the focus is. I mean, one of the focuses we've talked about so many times is the DPW and the trailers. And where's the focus? And it kinda, with what happened with now the senior center and, fire substation, it seems like, I'm not sure where the priorities are anymore.
Well, see, I would actually, I mean, before I jump into that, cause that reminded me that are we done with
Yeah.
capital planning? Are we happy with that solution?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cause I would like to go and see the chief of the fire department and find out, I hear different things from different people of what he wants. And we had him in here one night, and that night he seemed to be really, his thing was he wanted more firemen and he needed more firemen. But now the topic has switched back to this North Hadley fire substation. And we can't be wishy-washy if we're gonna go to the people and ask for money.
Well,
We gotta know what he actually wants.
he made it clear that that is a needed thing, but he also needs more firemen. That station is still needed in North Hadley. He made that clear that that's what he wanted, but he also needs more full-time staffing to get him up to code.
And my understanding is that it's just the way it fell, because it wasn't necessarily did he need the fire station first, it was just the timing.
They need the
And then the
substation there.
town voted because it was up, and they needed to decide what to do with it. They were looking, they voted to get rid of the North Hadley Hall, so now what are we gonna do with the fire truck? It was a domino effect type of thing.
Exactly.
But he does need the extra help.
Alright, well, so since then, the property that they originally thought they were gonna build this substation on is no longer appropriate, or is gonna cost a lot more money than originally voted on to do because of this compaction problem in the dirt.
I think it's 2 separate issues for his standpoint. Yes, he needs that, but he also needs a full-time staff.
So at this point, I think that aren't we putting the Band-Aid on that North Hadley Hall where we're gonna keep the fire truck there for now? Right?
Mhm.
Didn't we build that up? We're gonna build that out so that.
It hasn't been done yet.
No, but I think it was $5,000?
$5,000, and we gave the green light on that.
Right.
Yeah, so
I
there's
mean-
no rush.
There's a house there that they can utilize still.
Mhm.
That's,
Right, and his full-time, and when he was talking, what I understand, that the full-time employees that he's looking for are not for that substation. They're for right here.
Right.
You know, and he's.
Well, I guess my
has his
point-
volunteers.
my point is, there's only so much pie. And he's asking for 2 helpings right now. So, I mean, you got all these other things on the list too that
He was not the one who brought the substation
No.
forward.
No, that
That
was
was
not his
not
pie.
him. That's not his pie. Though he wants it and needs it, that was not him bringing that forward. He was fine, content using North Hadley Hall
As it is.
as it is. You
He
see,
just doesn't want to get rid of his space there.
he still feels that the need of a substation in North Hadley. It kind of got pushed on him when they decided that they were gonna sell North Hadley Hall.
Mhm.
Then where you're gonna, then you're gonna pay somebody else to rent a space to house your fire trucks. Is that logical?
None of this is logical. That's the
Okay.
problem I'm
But what
having.
I'm saying, it's two separate, you should go, and if you feel like
I-
you didn't understand what he was saying, you should go talk to him and then bring it back to us, but I
Yeah,
think,
I'm gonna do
in
that.
my opinion, he made that kinda clear.
Mhm.
You know, both of them are needed, but they're separate. He doesn't need the full-time, am I wrong? The full-time employees down at the substation, he needs those here. And that substation is needed for,
Is it just a storage thing?
no, they still work out of there. Your, Call people.
The call people,
Mhm.
call force works out
oh
of
yeah,
there?
they had something the other, I don't know, about a week ago, I saw, heard the trucks going out. So, I mean, they're very active.
Because I've heard some rumors that it's simply a storage issue, and I've heard, I hear lots of different things, and I'm trying to
Well, it
figure out
is
what the
a s-
real thing is.
The storage issue is, we have a truck that's too big to house in our locations. So yes, that's one thing, but there's still a need for that substation. And I think that was his opinion, he gave all the statistics of how many miles and so forth, right?
He gave all that information.
He gave all that information, so it's just, I just think, in my opinion, you have a town that's growing, and you need more than just one. That guy works nonstop.
Well, I'm all for him getting the 4 firemen. I think I've been clear on that.
Well, I know, but you're saying he wants his pie, you need it too, type thing, so.
Well, but
Everybody does in this town.
well, that's right, and it's the job of the finance committee to dole out pie. So
Well, there's only so much. It's our job to make a suggestion,
yeah, right.
okay?
So
And there's only so much. When you're talking about money and finances, because what's important to me, first safety has always been important to me.
well, that
School.
makes sense.
But what I'm saying, what I feel that is very important is this building itself. We're getting it running with the IT and maybe a human resource person shared, and making things flow much easier and not all on your shoulders. It's just like everything's on your shoulders. And I think that it's important that we have a support system here. And I don't feel that you have it or all of the other employees.
So with that said, do we want to start going down the list? Because I consider this list less about what we think is most important to fund and more about where we should prioritize our time in the upcoming every other week meetings.
Okay, that makes
Because ultimately, as much as we might care about all of this, we'll only have the time to talk about. I mean, it's already been almost an hour.
And I think that when we prioritize, which are important to us, that we should invite the people that are most involved in that certain topic
Of course.
to talk to us. I think that's important as well. Whoever it is on the select board and.
Exactly, and having this game plan so we can kind of map out our agenda in the weeks forward will allow us to invite them and arrange all of that.
But on some of it, like the public safety, now I think we all feel that it's important to spend too much time. I mean, the fire chief is already, yeah, maybe we can do a little bit more, but I've heard him explain it several times.
well.
But I've been to more than, because
Oh,
I've been
right.
hearing it for a while more, so.
Exactly.
And
But-
so, correct me if the select board is thinking about this differently. I consider this not. So, if I was to put 3 out of 5 for the fire department, I wouldn't consider that they're not a priority for our funding. I would consider that we've heard enough. We know we spend enough time talking about it.
Sure.
It is not a priority for our time right now. Is that-
Well, we also have to, what I think is a priority for our time is that we want to see that staffed, so we have to figure out where the funding's coming from.
fair enough.
Sure.
So we don't need to hear why
Okay,
he
so-
needs it or whatever. We need to figure out, as we know, is 19 is going to be probably a rough year. We have to figure out, well, where can we get this funding?
Okay, so right there it says, and I've heard this a number of times, dispatch, explore, regionalization. Has
Yeah.
that explore been explored?
I think you need to hold off on the dispatch and the ambulance a little
Yeah,
bit, because
they're not.
because the committee is meeting every other week at this point, and they have people coming in. They're looking at
Okay,
that
so
kind of
somebody's
stuff
actually working on it.
every other week.
Okay.
Yeah, I attend those meetings every other week.
Okay, so that's the thing one of the things I was unsure, because I've heard in select board meeting a number of times about dispatch and explore regionalization, but I never really heard that anybody actually did any exploring. So you're telling me someone's actually exploring.
Well, with the ambulance, they're asking a lot of the questions with the dispatch and to see what we can do, and there are,
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're working
Yeah,
on that.
We have a draft RFP ready for
Yes.
that
Mhm.
as well.
So going through the list
So-
then, oh, sorry.
So to answer your question that you posed, I think, I understand what you're talking about is that if you wanted to put a couple of things into, like, this is in a stable orbit, we got this under control, it's important, but these things are out of control, it's still a little wobbly. I'm not sure the select board are looking at it quite that way, they're talking about what's the most important of all these things that are out there, what are the most, what's the most weighty?
Mm,
Maybe not maybe not what's under control.
I see.
Right, because they're looking for, can they give permission to the chief to hire, like by fall town meeting?
Yeah, so they're looking at this list, what matters most,
Yeah,
not
Mhm.
what demands my most immediate attention.
exactly,
I see.
exactly. That's the way I see it at this point.
And
So
we're,
at this point, public safety would be one.
I would think it would be one.
One.
Also. I put a 1 here.
So I'll keep notes as a committee if we seem to have reached a consensus on what we as a finance committee
Mm-hmm.
think of this. So 1 for
Fine.
public safety.
mhm.
Going down, so fire department and police department staffing, which I think is primarily fire department staffing for us right now. Sounds like
Right.
a 1.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, can I ask a quick question? Was it two select board meetings? Like, the entire Hadley Police Department showed up and they asked the select board if they could make that officer a permanent officer or something.
Or they voted them in.
They voted him in. Was that an FTE that was already approved and in the budget, or was that something
I'm
different?
drawing a blank on what you're talking about, I don't remember this.
I don't
You don't remember the
remember.
policeman in here? There was like
The
half a
police-
dozen
police
policemen in here.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, but
sorry, I
that was
thought-
more than 2 meetings ago. That was,
No, it could only have been 2 or 3 meetings ago.
That's a replacement, that's not an addition.
So that FTE existed. They were just
Exactly.
getting permission to hire that person.
right.
Right, so
Okay.
we had a resignation, they're filling up the resignation.
Okay, so that wasn't anything more.
That
That
was
was just
not
a
an
change
addition.
of personnel. Okay. And did we get did any money come back? Did the person who resigned get paid more than the person who was hired?
I don't know the answer to that, I'll have to look into it.
Okay.
Did, alright, I don't wanna go off topic. I'll wait to the end. Let's do this. I'm sorry.
No, it's
And then
okay.
just to clarify, we're talking about weightiness now and what we consider the most important,
The most
Well, I can't
important,
see
not
him if
about
I have
time
him on.
prioritization.
it's about
I can see
gravitas.
you.
About gravitas. So, fire department, public, staffing, we considered a 1.
Mm-hmm.
So dispatch, exploring regionalization,
That's kinda grouped in with the ambulance.
Yeah, I have that grouped in with the dispatch and ambulance because Amy just said she's on that. She's
Yeah,
turning the crank on that.
But they're not ready. I mean, we're still listening to all the other towns, and we're gonna go see what's out there, what
So-
people can offer us.
Really, what would be the only other towns, Amherst and Northampton, right, that they can regionalize with?
Well, they're looking to see about private,
Okay,
so it's not just the
that's
towns.
interesting.
so in terms of potential benefit to the town, I kind of would put this at a 3 in terms of how important I consider it. Right, it's certainly worth pursuing, but compared to getting more firemen,
Well,
you know,
here's the thing with the ambulance. The ambulance it's gonna cost, it's not a moneymaker. It's something that's gonna cost money. Yeah. And they've said it over and over again, this costs money.
Over time, you hope to break even.
Well, Hadley is in a good spot in some cases compared to other towns because the people that we have here are mainly insured. All the students are insured. We have a good so
there's not too many people
the collecting of the bills is higher here than in some other towns. But the problem is, it's still because you're funding, you're staffing it all the time. You have to have so many people staffing it. It's still hard to break even.
And would that be? And it would all be under the chief's domain, under the fire chief's domain.
That's where some of them go, and that's what they're looking at some point. But they're also looking to see, there are there's some places that'll do it for free. There's some places that cost money to do it. There's, Amherst, we're paying $140,000 a year, but the problem is, and when we're focusing on this, it's not really about the money as much. Yeah, we're gonna have to look at the money, but we're also focusing on the safety. And what happens is Amherst is overwhelmed at this point,
Oh, right, they're thin, stretched out thin.
stretched out very thin. And if we need to get good response, we need to be fast and have the best response here and give the best care as possible. We have some great people on this committee. I'm just listening because these are people that have a lot of knowledge. And so it's amazing that we had someone from Pioneer Valley, the Pioneer Valley ambulance. They came down and talked to us. We had someone from Southampton come and talk to us, who's also part of Northampton. So it's been quite interesting, but it's all about the care that we're going to give, and to see it, and we are looking at the private sector too. So we do realize it's going to cost money. And the other thing is, there's differences between, they call it the ALS versus the BLS. So the where it means if someone's having a heart attack versus someone that just has a broken leg. So there's so many differences, and what can we even offer? Well, if we were to do it ourselves, we can't even offer the top rate service because you have to have been in it so long. So it's not something that we're looking at this point to even take on as the town of Hadley right away.
So I see this
So
more
it's
way
some-
down the road.
So right.
And you have a group of people that are very knowledgeable and
And
working
working
on
on
it,
it.
so I don't think that it should be a priority of ours at this
No,
point.
I don't think so. I think that that down the road, we would need to present something and see where, yeah.
Right, so that would be on the lower scale.
But the dispatch is higher.
Well, not necessarily, because that's gonna be part of it. So sometimes if we can get someone to do it that could help with the dispatch, or that could, whether it be someone private using some of we have a great dispatch area. We have great equipment. We have a good spot. I don't know how we're gonna handle it.
Does the current dispatch do both fire and police?
Any emergency call,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Now, here's the thing, when, say an ambulance call comes right now, and you do it on your cell phone, it goes to
State,
the state.
Yeah.
Then
The
it
state
goes
brings it back.
to here, but we don't have an ambulance here. Now, then it goes over to Amherst. So that call bounces around a lot. So the last thing we want to do is to have calls bouncing all over the place. We're trying to get a good grasp on the quickest response.
And so
I've
then-
had to use that 911 several times, and they've been fast
Yeah.
on the response time. Yes, it does. It goes to the state police, and they stay on the line with you until you get somebody in Hadley.
Mhm.
So, I mean, as it's going bing, 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 all those people are still on the line with you.
Sure.
So,
Well, it depends what the emergency is. If you're having a heart attack, you can't afford the ping, ping, pings.
the police are right there first. They're equipped with AED. My husband's stuff was all related to the heart. So, yeah, they're all on the phone with you until the ambulance gets there. But usually police get called first. That's why police are equipped with AEDs, because usually they're first on the scene.
I just think that these two topics you need to push back and not worry about as much until you
No, I
can let
agree.
this committee
So these other
give
groups-
you recommendations.
Okay, so I put a 5 here for those.
But just to reiterate, we're talking about overall importance, not what's pressing, right?
Right.
So in terms of how we feel about this as an overall importance to the town of Hadley, whoever's looking at it or whatever timetable it's on,
Or I think safety, the whole thing, safety is number one.
right? So in terms of
Exactly.
dispatch and ambulance,
So maybe you should
are
make
those,
2 categories. One that is your original idea of what are we going to spend our time on,
Yeah.
and then the other thing would be what is the global priority list, and those numbers may be different. Like in this particular case, right? Where it's number 1 because we're really concerned about public safety, but it's
I agree.
but
I think
those
to
2 are
keep
going to
us-
be like number 5 because this other committee hasn't
Right.
done their work yet.
So I agree we'll have those 2 separate lists. I do wanna start with the overall importance to
Mm.
keep us on the same board as select board, same page as select board, so that when we go to them at the tri-board meeting or next week, whenever, we'll be able to be on the same
Yeah.
page. But I do agree we should have a separate list for what's most pressing for us to work on.
Yep.
Which certainly that'd be a 5, cause we're not
Do
gonna
you
be.
not think that the budget is not pressing to work on? that at the end of each year, we have to wait until the fall to balance our budget. Don't you think that's like
Oh, yeah,
something
that-
that we have to unwrap?
But all these things,
If you don't have funding to fund these things,
There's
where
a
are
lot
you?
of things on this list that impact that though. So just starting at the top, if you're talking about override options, if we're talking about a fall override, that would have a huge impact on the budget.
right,
Exactly, and I
right,
think that you
so-
have to prioritize what is needed, so the goal is that maybe we have to go to the town people to ask for an override to be able to get these things into play.
So that's why we're going through this list and saying what's most important, then what's most pressing might be a different conversation.
Well, I think it's all important.
Sure, but not everything can be a one, hence the point of
I
this
think that you
exercise.
need to focus on what we can do and prioritize what we can do now as it coming up to July 1 before fall meeting. There's no way we're gonna get all this done before that.
I agree, but I think it's useful to have the two lists. So you have this list to bring to the select board, so if
Oh,
they're
I
talking.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree, but I think we should focus on if we were going to, or even if the select board's thinking about an override for the fall, what, in that override, what would be the things that we would wanna put into that for
Right.
fall out of this list?
Okay, so then starting at the top, I listed that as a one, because I think it's extremely
Right.
important.
Yeah, and I would just say that, thinking about an override, the select board has been very clear, they don't want a one-time Band-Aid override, then that's fine.
Exactly.
So I think that's what Gabriel is going to, is like, if you're gonna do an override, do it once and do it right, so what are your priorities within that override?
Yeah, I think I said that, so,
Yeah,
I think
Right.
we're on the same page.
yeah,
But then just wrapping up dispatch and ambulance in terms of how important we think it is overall.
they're
1
all
through 5.
important, but I don't think we're gonna be able to do anything with the ambulance or dispatch between now and the fall.
That goes on the what's most pressing.
Right.
So I'm talking about what's most important.
Is the fire department and police department.
Okay, so then what about dispatch and ambulance, 1 through 5? Just trying to get our committee aligned on that. I put them in terms of like, if I'm comparing override options and fire staff,
Mm-hmm.
I put dispatch and ambulance below that, so I put it at 3s. Is what I personally put down. Not everything can be a 1 is my thinking.
No, right, absolutely.
So then how does the committee feel about dispatch and ambulance 1 through 5? Just to get a general sense of it.
well, considering that there's other committees working on it, and we've heard that they're like at the beginning of the working, not at the end, I would put it more towards a 4 or a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Only because we're waiting for those folks to come back and say, okay, well, we thought about it and we did think this, that, and the other
Sorry.
thing.
Not to be
Yeah.
harping on it, but again, not in terms of pressing this, but just an overall importance. Right, maybe
let
I'm
let me,
not
let
explaining
me
it well.
say, do you endorse the work of the ambulance
Yes.
subcommittee?
Okay.
Alright, I think that's what we're talking about. You're endorsing their work, you're happy to let them churn away
Yeah.
and we're eagerly anticipating the results, which will come in the fullness of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I
Okay.
instead of are you gonna, Gabriel? Are you gonna go through? You're not doing the sub where we're just talking about general information. You're going to each and every.
I was
single-
going line by line,
Line
yeah,
by
but
line.
we can do though just by category if that's simpler to
because
get
I
through.
mean public safety. We could just use the whole thing as a
Right,
public
but
safety.
I just wanted to make sure we're not talking about public safety 1 because fire, but we don't care at all about dispatch or ambulance. You're right, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
because there is a number of things on this list,
sure.
review of board stipends or OPEB. A big discrepancy in my opinion between importance.
Right, yeah, review of board stipends, 0, right, just,
Low, yeah, where OPEB might be much.
Well-
So if we just said people related costs was a 1, that'd be a bit misleading.
I think you're looking at, just to say the stipends, I think what they're doing is looking at overall, if all these boards, what they're getting paid versus if we end up getting a town manager, we wouldn't need all those boards, correct?
This comes from a
They
recommendation.
would be advisory boards.
Comes from the recommendation of the Department of Revenue that we take away the stipends of the elected officials who
Mhm.
are non-full-time. That would save something like $25,000 a year, so.
Yeah, so
That's what they're talking about, and
Okay.
then there's the benefits as well for
Mhm.
those
And-
people who still receive them.
So in some cases, I do think it's just, I think it's very important, like OPEB, because it would save the budget a lot of money. You know,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's a lot of money we're talking about, year after year, especially if you're adding on the benefits.
Mm-hmm,
So it's a big focus to our budget.
right. So in those stipends, you know, you're saying roughly 25,000?
Wow, I didn't realize it was that high.
That's because you're only getting $100.
Right.
Yeah,
We meet more than some of them do when they get paid higher than we do, okay? We're gonna meet twice a month.
Did you realize it was that high?
I-
25,000?
No, I did. I knew it.
Well, some of them,
And that's
when
not
you look through the
including
budget, some of them get
insurance.
thousands.
Hence the
yeah.
value of going down the list, so we can figure out stuff like this.
Well, that's where we can get money, so I think that's important.
So and we'll get to, so starting at the top.
And I
All right,
feel
let's
like
start-
it's almost an easier one to deal with.
We
So-
need money.
So naming them out,
So let's-
override options.
See, I think that's a very high priority in both things we should be concerned about and things we should be working on, because I don't see how we get out of the rest of the budget without an override.
Right.
And so specifically, this is referring to education on our override options as a finance committee and as a tri-board.
Yeah, well,
only
we
in
need
St.
that.
Paul Ridge
That's the
Islands.
first. That's the first thing.
I think that's a very high priority for the town.
And
Is what?
say it again.
So override options referring to specifically educating the boards, finance committee, school committee, and
Okay,
select board in our options and how we would go about it if we
Right.
were to do something.
that is important.
Cool. So I one for all of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Override options 1. Charter, town manager versus administrator discussion follow-up.
Is
David,
this-
you could give us a little background, because I think we're all a little too new.
Well,
for,
I sat in a
Yeah.
meeting that,
Oh.
and Amy, you did
Yeah,
too,
I did
right?
too. Hmm. We had someone come.
We had
David
two
invited
people
someone.
come.
Yeah.
And tell us how their towns, they both town managers,
Yeah,
administrators?
so we had Bill Keegan out of Foxborough and Tim McInerney out of Grafton came.
Mhm.
They're on the form of government committee for the Managers Association. It's a resource that we can tap into for free. They've offered to come back. They talked about the different kinds of government, form of government for small towns. So you've got mayor, council, you've got select board, representative town meeting with an administrator or manager, you've got manager council. I mean, there are lots of different ways of putting this together. They recommended that you take a year, that you study this. Each town will end up with a different structure, whatever is right sized for Hadley. But they were also springboard. That the reason why they were here is because we got the January report from the Department of Revenue that said that you should be looking into a change of your form of government, either through bylaw or by charter. And right now we don't have a charter, so that's the impetus for that. So
what's the actual difference between a town manager and a town administrator?
town manager has 3 powers which I do not currently. One is the hire and fire authority. That also can extend to appointing and not appointing the committees. The other is that the town manager presents the budget. So right now I present a budget, but it's a recommended budget. The select board is free to accept or not accept. Under a manager form of government, it would be my budget. That would be presented to town meeting with your recommendation for or against. The third thing is that the manager has contract signing authority. So the manager signs all the contracts, the union contracts, all the other vendor contracts and so forth. So those are powers that I currently do not have.
So that streamlines the system, even though it takes power away from the select board and the finance committee.
It does, and puts the select board in the position of being more like a board of directors who make
Advisory board.
not an advisory. They would set the policy, the overall strategic vision for the town, and the manager would then implement that.
And the manager is not an elected position, it's
That's a
hired by the select board.
right, but contracted for I think a term of 3 or 5 years.
So much like a typical executive director and a board of directors for
Yeah.
businesses or
Yeah.
other organizations.
And so if they didn't like it, they'd have to wait 3 years to make a change.
No, the contract usually has some sort of
clause in
dismissal,
it, yeah.
dismissal without cause or dismissal with cause, section to it.
You can get out of anything as long as you pay.
Well, but that's, yeah, right, you don't wanna pay, that's the problem. Paying is what we have that's the hardest thing that we have to do is pay things, right?
So then for prioritizing this, the discussion is, do we think this is a worthwhile discussion to be having? Not like whether we favor town manager or nothing like that, but do
Well,
we
it seems
think
like
this
that's
is
more of
well-
a select board thing.
Well, sorry, so in terms of importance to the town, should this discussion be taking place at some board and someone should be having it? How do we feel about if it's important?
Let me just say that the decision about a charter should not be about the one position. In this case, most people think about town manager or town administrator. Should really talk about the overall structure of the town. Right now, you have a very horizontal organization chart, which you have in your budget materials. Okay, so that means that decision-making is diffuse, hard to get things done, hard to get everybody that you need to into the same room together. If you had a much more vertical organization, then whether that be through a manager or a strong select board, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that really is what you're talking about.
I think that it's a lot to do with this organizational chart, and somehow I think a lot of this all is together, such as the town manager versus administrator, as of the having the reviewing board, we could even look at reviewing boards and stipends, maybe, some of the committees, who, what committees report to who does what, commissioners versus, non-commissioners, some have commissioners, some has trustees, I mean, the whole thing, if we're looking at. The other thing is, and we're talking about, the HR person or the finance person, getting a finance person in here, I think that's all should be done together.
Did the other towns have a town manager and a finance person?
Yeah, so the town of Amherst, for example, is a good example of
Mhm.
that. So we had John Massanti, and then we had, who was the town manager, now it's Paul Bockelman, and you had Sandy Pooler, who's
Mhm.
since moved on to Arlington, who was the financial manager. Another good example would be the town of Concord, where you have Chris Whalen as the town manager, and until recently, Tony Logalbo was the town finance director, who just, there wasn't a number he didn't know. He's retired, but he was kind of like the guru of finance directors.
So his knowledge retired with him?
Yep,
That's what typically happens.
yeah.
So then to put it more broadly, do we think that it's worthwhile to have a discussion on the structure of Hadley's government and
Mhm.
possibly recommending changes to it?
Yes.
And I think that's how you opened up your conversation with me earlier today, is what is the finance committee supposed to do?
Right.
Right, I'm trying to figure out what our role is,
I
more
think Chuck-
specifically.
So while we're talking about the structure, can I just ask David something? I'm sure you probably figure I'm gonna ask him anyways. Commissioners, who do we have left in town for commissioners,
You have
departments?
You have the Park and Rec Commission
Mhm,
with 3 members.
mhm.
And who's the commissioner, Andy?
Andy,
The 3 of them together are commissioners.
Oh, okay.
okay, so is that the only department?
You have the select board double as water commissioners and sewer commissioners and highway commissioners and police commissioners.
I thought we got rid of the sewer commissioners, or no, the select board.
The select board assumed their duties.
Yeah, so theoretically, we only have Park and Rec left.
Historic commission,
Okay, are they paid?
no,
Okay,
Park and Rec,
yes,
okay,
are they paid a lot?
no, but, no,
And some
Okay.
of them are still getting healthcare though, that's expensive.
I think at least one of them is.
yes. So my question for them is, what are their roles? What can they do and not do?
The Park and Rec Commission?
Right, what is their job?
All right, so the Park and Rec Commission have broad powers under Massachusetts law when it comes to parks. When they are in a park or when they're managing a park, they have the same powers as select board members. They can hire and fire, they have contract signing authority, they can
They can hire and fire what?
personnel,
They can?
like coaches,
Okay,
alright.
but how about the coordinator and so forth?
Coordinator, the way I look at it is that that's something that's larger than just parks.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so that's a hire that comes under the select board.
Okay, so then tell me, who decides the salary for their employees?
For the employees, it would be permanent employees would be the select board, and for the temporary employees, it would be the Park and Rec Commission.
And where does that say that in the bylaws?
It says it in Mass General Law, Chapter 42, Section 6.
So there.
You
That's a
got
good one.
chapter 40 what? 42?
42, Section 6.
Okay, so I would like to see that, because I have chapter 45.
Okay. It might be 45, Section 6.
Okay,
Alright.
What's the, what are you driving
see,
at?
here we go. This
made
is
it up.
my issue this is why I feel it's important to relook at the government of the town of Hadley. And this is not personal against anybody, but we're setting a precedence here. Each department sets a precedence, and we have employees in the town that see how other departments are working, and they don't have a voice to speak, or to whom, or anybody, because that's just the way it is in this department. We don't have an HR person that they can go and talk to. So, I wanted to know, we have a Park and Rec coordinator who makes a such amount of dollars after being here 10 or whatever years. And then your commissioners hire somebody, 2 commissioners hire somebody, bringing them in at $25 an hour. I had many phone calls from people that already work in the town of Hadley that don't even make that and have specialties. So,
Are these
and they're
coaches
supposed
that
to,
are making 25?
no, it's an interim person who's gonna be interim, meaning Kathy's still there to the end of, June, I think? And now we're paying somebody additional $25 an hour
To take over her
to
duties?
watch her and learn what she does, yes. For 7 weeks, cause that's how many it was, or
So
whatever.
we're double paying that position for 7 weeks?
Yeah.
And how was that decided upon?
I don't know, I'd like to know that.
And where did the budget line come from?
Well, because they haven't hired their assistant yet, and so there's money in their budget. But was that money that we were thinking that was gonna come back to the town and help us out in other areas?
So there's a lot there.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Alright.
Please expound.
So as I said, the Park and Rec Commission have broad powers when it comes to parks.
Well, okay, so
Alright, so-
to parks, so I wanna see where it says they can hire fire and set the pay scale.
You're not gonna find that level of specifics in that particular
Does it even give me the idea that they can do that? I don't care about the hiring and the firing, it's setting the pay scale.
Okay.
Really. Here we are trying to figure out finances, and you have 2 people out of the 3 after a select board meeting. Let me just read the minutes, okay? Well, actually, I'm not gonna even read the minutes. I want all of you to go on the website and read these minutes, okay?
Well, go ahead
You
and read
have-
them, it's only a small
No.
paragraph.
I'm not gonna do that. So the other thing is, you have employees that came to us and say, we work 2-3 extra hours a week that we don't even get paid for. And probably a lot of you do that consistently here. And then you have a commission that goes ahead and does that and makes other employees that work for the town for many years think, how does that work?
So the Park and Rec Commission is gonna be meeting with the select board on the 14th to hash out this issue.
But they already did it, and why do they feel that they have the power to do it if it doesn't state it, in my opinion, in these? I was a Park and Rec Commissioner, I know what my things, it was there to support
wait.
the coordinator, okay, to support the coordinator in activities. We didn't care about getting paid, we were there all the time. It bothers me, because here we are trying to figure out finances, and we have departments that are like
So
So I think that
question-
goes, I think it,
So, sorry, I'm wondering about the select board meeting that's upcoming. Is the discussion going to be around the decision made and hashing out the appropriateness of it, or the policy and procedure around who actually has
Well,
the?
I would like to know the policy and the
What's the-
procedure.
Well, I also think, the entire future of Park and Rec Commission is gonna be something that people are gonna be talking about.
Well, cause the select board meeting, I've seen them both, cause I was on vacation. Molly suggested, looking at the department as a whole and figuring out what is needed or not needed now, the changes, because here we are, we don't have North Hadley Hall for them to use for space. So are they limited on their programs? Like where's Park and Rec going, basically? So, and I know that the school this year, the basketball program that our varsity coach usually puts on this summer had to be canceled because they're doing the floors in the school. So it's hard to schedule programs when you don't know, you don't have any space to do these things in.
Where are they?
And then
where
you
are
get
they
them taken
having-
away from you. So it's like,
Where are they having their outdoor things this summer? Do we not know?
no, they're having their outdoor soccer programs right at Hopkins. They can use the outside, but we can't use the gyms inside. Of
Well-
course, that changes yearly. Next year we might be able to use.
So
The gyms and the space.
going back to the whole discussion about a charter, and what do you want your government to look like, and how are the,
This is where I'm saying I feel it's more important to look at the government and if you were to switch and change your government, then
Right.
things would happen differently. And I think you'd have happy employees.
So I agree, and I placed it pretty high myself. I put it as a 2,
Mhm.
behind basically override options, because I think that'd be a huge, change for the town, and fire and safety, because I also saw that as pressing. So I don't know how other people feel. 2,
But I think when you look at and like you said, you can't have everything on one. But when you look at it, I think that if we're gonna focus on a 2, I think it's the whole organizational chart, the whole thing, which would then make maybe reviewing the boards and stipends a 2, some of these others a 2.
yeah,
They'd all be
stuff
in the
that's
same
similar
thing.
would be similar.
So I guess to you, were you knowledgeable of that? How
I-
does it work?
I gave the Park and Rec Commission my advice. They didn't listen to my advice.
Okay, so theoretically, that's how it works if you have a commission?
Well, in this particular case, they've got broad powers, I keep on saying that. In the case of the fire chief, he's got hiring and firing authority, because he's a strong chief. We've adopted that section of Mass General Law, making him strong chief. The police chief does not have that kind of authority. I don't have that kind of authority.
Wait. The
But if
police
you were-
chief can't hire and fire.
That's
No, the
correct.
select board does it.
That's what we saw at the.
That's what you
But
saw
the
here.
the fire
The
chief can
would
hire
do it
and fire.
Because they're both strong chiefs, but they're strong chiefs under different sections of Mass General Law. Fire chief has broader powers than the chief of police over the employees.
There's a whole section you can watch it on demand on
Is
his
this what you're
website.
talking about?
And
Am
I
I
watched
looking
about
at the right
strong
thing?
chiefs versus
Not strong
the
chiefs?
weak chiefs. Yeah.
The
Weak
weak
chiefs?
Yes, weak
So then
chiefs,
the
yes.
press
It
forward,
is.
just because we're at
That's it.
8:25.
It just seems weird that they
So
have
where
different.
in this, you tell me, you just,
Okay, so
quoted something in
we've-
here.
I think we've drilled down to the level of one particular issue that irks us.
I wanna
But-
make sure I'm reading it correctly.
But you all wanted to make sure that you're using your time wisely.
Okay, so that's a good way of avoiding it, but that's
Mhm.
good.
So how do we
Tell you
feel
what,
about a 2?
I'll underline it for you while you talk.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So how do we feel about a 2? Any cases for higher or lower?
2 is fine with me.
2's good.
Okay, so we got charter at 2. So
Okay.
moving on to people-related costs, so the Hampshire Trust with Joe Shea, my understanding is this would be more for educating us on our position, rather than like, do we think the Hampshire Trust is important, right? David, correct
So-
me if I'm wrong,
He's
sorry.
highlighting something.
Yeah, what?
Hampshire Trust, was this item put on here as similar to override options in terms of how important it is to educate ourselves on our position with the Hampshire Trust and our options? That's how I was reading it.
Is
Yeah.
Hampshire Trust and the COG the same thing?
No, they're two
Mm-mm.
different things.
Oh.
So Hampshire Trust, we're having a vote next Wednesday about plan design for the future. I don't know what to say about given the uncertainty over the health insurance in general, I'm not sure how highly to rate it as something to work on actively.
If they're voting on it next Wednesday,
They're
Can we-
voting on just options at this
Oh,
point,
okay.
alright.
Hmm.
Can we invite him to one of our meetings and have him,
Yeah, certainly worth
Tell
learning
us.
more about, yeah.
Yeah,
just so he gives us more knowledge of what it's about?
I,
Yeah, so I'll
that's
just-
because I have no idea.
I don't have any idea
Kind of put a
either.
null by it since
I
we're not knowledgeable enough to
I
really
think
rate
it's
it.
high importance in terms of paying attention to it. I think it's low importance in terms of rate of return on minutes spent on the issue,
Sure.
because it's gonna take care of itself one way or the other.
Gotcha, so I'll put a null, and once we learn more, we can.
And maybe we could reach out to him to put him on a future agenda,
Mhm.
give him some dates and see what's good for him.
So OPEB with Parker Elmore, I assume it's
This is the wrong
similar,
one.
Well,
It
that's
should
why I
be
asked you.
Section 6, that's the one that we need.
so OPEB I assume similar,
Yeah.
it's not something that we're gonna be, it's not a huge project for us to work on, it's just something that is important for us to keep monitoring and
Right.
kind of be knowledgeable on, not an
Yeah.
action item.
So this Parker Elmore, who is he?
He's the guy who's our OPEB manager for the actuarial, I should say. He's the OPEB by actuarial. So he's the guy that every 2 years runs the numbers and tells us where we stand with respect to our unfunded liability for future costs of health insurance and life insurance for our retirees. The people who run the trust is Bartholomew Investments.
And was it Parker that was speaking last night to the select board?
Tanya.
There was was a bunch of different people. who
Oh,
spoke.
yeah, there was, Mike Zarzinski was here, he's a former rep from the HCOG. The fellow there was David Eisenthal, he's from Unibank and he's their chief financial advisor. He basically works on our borrowing for us.
So,
So-
how do people feel about Parker Elmore? Do we want to put him in the same category as Joe Shea, or do we, in other words, do we want him to come here and talk to us, or is that not appropriate?
I feel that down the road, sure, why not listen, but I don't think it's an importance. I would, both of these I'd put down lower.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
doing really well on OPEB, the liability dropped
3
by
or 4?
almost 500,000,
Sure,
so.
I'm happy even with a 4.
I'd be, yeah,
Okay.
4.
So review of board stipends, so I think this, like Terry said, it works into the charter discussion that we just had as
Mhm.
part of the overall structure of government.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, one of the things that I noticed when we were flipping through the budget is some people get paid almost nothing, us, and other people get paid a lot, and it's not clear why.
But notably, when we're talking about board stipends, I think we could carve that off and separate it from the overall discussion on the charter. And
Right, but I think
so-
we gotta get the stipends up higher in the discussion.
So that's what I'm saying, we can rank it differently than the charter, because this is an issue that we could make its own thing if we wanted to just talk about it.
Yeah, and so what would be nice to have, David, is a list of all the stipends, so we know who's what,
Mhm.
right? Then we have something to
Especially
actually
if
look
we
at.
can save $25,000.
Well, I mean, it's,
Wow.
when I was
Then that
asked to
puts a
do
lot of
this,
responsibility.
well, he's just collating the data.
Yeah.
Right, no, when you're saying to get rid of, it would put a lot of responsibility on him. We need to give him a raise.
Well, but I mean, so
David's being quiet.
I would still be on the finance committee whether or not I got the $100.
Oh, granted, I agree with you.
So,
And for a long time, they didn't get the $100. Am I right? They gave
it back, yeah.
they gave it back.
well, I had to like send my address in, but I never got anything.
Well, I know, I asked about that.
I actually processed your payment and I got your email saying, where is the damn money?
I didn't say that. Well, they're asking.
And I said I'd follow up on that, so I shall. I mean,
Well, he just said he got an email asking, we still haven't seen it, and I got my other check faster than that.
If I fill out an invoice and say, please pay, and it doesn't get paid, then for just internal controls, I wanna know what happened to the invoice.
I think they were waiting for addresses.
I sent in my address.
Oh, wow.
Plus, all of our addresses are downstairs.
Yeah, we know where you are.
Not in a rush, and I trust the money will come. So in terms of how important we think this is to be reviewed, however we feel it had to be reviewed.
So I would put that as a 2 or a 3,
Mm-hmm.
only because I want review of wage study to go up higher than that.
Okay, so I'd say 3.
Okay.
So then review
On
of
the
wage
re-
study.
That-
Review of board stipends, you're saying 3? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because I think review of wage study is much more important than
Yeah,
review of
you
those
need-
stipends.
really
Wage
need-
study is a
re-
much more
Really need to
problematic
grapple with that.
issue, like all the stuff you just brought up.
Well, what I brought up is just, I wanted to know the process, and I didn't get the answer to that, so.
But there's lots, I mean, I've had lots
The
of,
review of the wage study, I am a firm believer of it,
Yeah.
as long as something comes out of it.
well, I
That's
mean,
why
I've
we
had
rank it high.
people come to me and say, well, I've worked at the town X number of million years and I make less money than,
It's-
some other person that was just hired.
It's true, though.
And that's where we gotta put our head around that and find out why those balances are like
But
that.
the wage study is, was it UMass that does that?
It was, UMass contributed to it, but,
Right.
What do you mean by wage study? Wage study to me means we look at all the paid people that we pay
Compare it.
and figure out who's making what and then ask the question, why is it set up that way?
yeah, this is more of a market condition study rather than a wage study. So,
It says review of wage.
I think you guys need to dig into it.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we keep on trying to do on the fly, and it's not,
What
It's
would be
never
the
res-
cost, you think, to hire a company to do that?
a few $1,000s.
To hire a company to do what?
An outside resource company that comes in and does the wage study, it
Yeah.
actually meets with each individual employee, they fill out a thing, I just did it in Northampton.
Yeah,
You fill out a job, what you feel your job thing is, and,
And they make a report?
They
Yeah.
and then they talk to the people individually, and they compare to other towns this size
Mm-hmm.
of what their pay scales are.
there's a number of outfits that do that. MRI out of Meredith, New Hampshire is very well respected. Collins Center out of UMass Boston.
Right, so we would need to find money to do that as well, or the cost, I think it's very important though.
I think so. And some of these, if they're not a lot, maybe, don't we have a small budget in
Mhm.
Yeah,
the finance that I think
Yeah.
maybe we could use.
yeah,
So I'm hearing 2.
I would say
too.
2.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't see why we, down the road, the stipends, we could do the same
He's
thing.
hell bent on putting a number next to every one of these
Well, I'm
things.
saying it's 8:30 and we're like a third way through the list.
All right, so 2 for the wage study.
So we talked about fire, dispatch and ambulance. I don't think we ever came to just a hard number. Is it possible to?
Well, that's that, we have to wait kind of thing.
So you want to just mark it as null? We don't know enough to be able to
Mhm.
actually
Yeah.
prioritize it.
You
Okay.
have an active.
A 1 next to the fire department staffing and then
Dispatch and ambulance just null.
no.
Mhm.
Nothing yet.
Okay.
Administrative support. So needs and skill analysis and resource management. So David, you can give us a little more background on this.
Yeah, so in the budget that was presented to you, you'll notice that there were requests for additional hours and additional staffing, which
Mhm.
was not recommended ultimately because there was no needs analysis done. Okay, so taking a view of all the processes that occur in an office, does it really translate into more hours? And if it does, then that's where we need to spend our time. Or can the work be done with the existing staff?
So does this come from ourselves in the select board, from yourself, or from department heads?
I think Molly is taking the spearhead on that one.
And when she does something like this, is it on a department by department basis, or is
Yeah.
it like a broad analysis?
I don't wanna speak for her, cause she hasn't given me that,
Oh, fair
that
enough.
information.
Is she meeting with people this week?
She is not, as it turns out, so many people are taking Friday off that that we've rescheduled that for
Okay.
June 23rd at 1 p.m.
It's now June 23rd?
June 23rd.
Is it, can I come to that?
Yeah,
I just wanna sit and listen.
sure.
Is it an open thing, or she's,
She extended the invitation to everybody who wanted to be there.
well, I don't wanna speak, I just wanna hear what everybody else has to say, so that's okay if I just sit in the background and listen.
Yeah, why don't you check it in with her,
Yeah, I'll send her an email.
Alright.
June 23rd,
June 23rd,
And
1 p.m.
where's that gonna be?
right here.
1 p.m.
1 p.m.?
Is there like a list people are signing up, that she'll know in advance who's
No, I
coming?
think it's whoever wants to show up.
So if everybody piles in at once.
So that's the day of the tri-board meeting in the evening, right?
No.
This is,
The day after,
June 23rd, that
Yeah.
would be Friday the 23rd.
the 22nd,
22nd is our meeting, 21st is the tri-board meeting,
right,
and she was having this when?
Friday the 23rd at 1 p.m.
here,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I can't do anything at 1 p.m.
Supposed
Well,
to
I'm
be,
gonna come and take notes,
it's
so.
supposed to be for the staff, so there's no
Okay.
obligation to be there.
Okay,
So then, do we wanna rank this or just say we don't know enough and we'll wait to,
just wait
Think
for
about this
Molly's
later. Yeah.
report.
Yeah,
so null. So human resources, short-term, long-term solutions.
that's
Um,
important.
I agree.
Important, like number one
It
important?
goes with the charter, town manager,
That's what I was thinking.
administrator.
Yeah, so then it's a 2.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, nice and easy. So information technology, same,
that's important too.
I think that would go with the organizing it, you know, who's doing what.
Well-
I mean, just as much as human resources, I guess.
Well, let me ask a question here,
That's
because
IT, right?
IT was brought up in select board meeting as, in terms of when we would ask for an override, we would include the fire department and IT and
That's right,
as one,
right,
you know, as one thing, because they only wanna go to the people once,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanna have a list of things that they need to get squared away and why we're asking for that. And so, I think that should be ranked the same as the personnel for the fire department
as a one,
as a 1, because those are things that would go on, you know, asking for an override, a permanent override to pay for that.
mm-hmm,
So I'm also wondering on timing, David, a needs analysis, especially if we're shooting for a fall override to include that in, we'd have to get on that like now, or has there already been enough besides the DOR?
Well, I think we don't have enough time to do everything that we wanna do. So, yes, you're absolutely right, and we need to be on this right now.
And it would be more time intensive than HR, you think? Kind of figuring out where we're at with IT and how we would ask for it?
if we were to look for an override, right? We would include the public safety, the IT,
Are we ready for an override in the fall, or maybe not till the
I
spring?
thought that they were gonna try to,
Are we really ready for the fall?
Well, it gets back to why we need to know about our options, and
Yeah.
be educated, that's why it's a one.
Yeah. I mean, I was hoping the select board would dig into this a little bit more than they did last night, but they had so much on their plate that,
maybe they should
they-
have an extra meeting.
that's what they did for next
It's
week.
okay if they have extra meetings,
They get paid more than we do.
not
Gabriel,
first
you
and
asked a
third,
question,
huh?
and I'm sorry I didn't
Yeah,
track
so
it as
if
well.
IT is gonna be harder to really wrap our heads around than human resources, I would feel comfortable putting it as a 1 even, if it's gonna be that much work to try and have it ready for the grand override, if there's a grand override. I
Does
don't
the
want freaking
school
people
have
out.
an HR person?
So they had Mr. Duffy, who's retired. I don't know if
He's
they,
IT, right?
He's
Not
IT,
HR.
HR.
HR, no, I'm sorry, it's, getting late in the night, I'm not tracking as well as I should. No, that's one of the things that we can look into as a shared, HR position,
Right,
yeah.
I just think IT's a kind of a tougher nut to crack.
well,
For-
you're
Yeah,
knowledgeable of that.
I didn't hear them talk about IT as part of the override.
Yeah,
No, I heard that
I
definitely.
heard it,
Mhm.
Okay,
yep,
Because they wanna go and ask for a chunk of money and say, we need to fix IT,
right,
cause, you know, people's
need to
computers
bring
are
this-
crap, and
right,
we need firemen because we don't have any except for 1.
right.
no,
Now-
we have two.
We got 2.
Did he hire the second
Now
person?
we're gonna get 3.
No, we already
Not
had
yet.
two,
We had 2, now we're gonna get 3.
now we're gonna have
So I would place this as a 1, just cause working in IT, I kinda know it's like, you don't really know what you don't know if you're
until
looking
you
to,
start digging in.
yeah, for IT specifically, it's so hard for,
Right.
if you're not an IT professional, to know the extent of what it would be to implement something like that.
I put IT as a 1.
So 1 for both the needs and the
So the
implementation
human
plan.
resource person is important, but I don't think that, I don't know, we gotta start somewhere.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's not just about IT, about a person. I think it's the whole structure of the
Oh,
IT,
yeah,
right?
totally agree.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are working with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission on a regional IT support service, so that's,
HR is more like
Mhm.
a shared, a person,
yeah.
Right.
right?
So I think it's very important, and we are actually taking a couple steps to make it happen.
Yeah, 'cause there's capital and
Mhm.
infrastructure goes into it, and it's
How about
pretty.
this, if we were to hire a human resource person, can we just look into how much the average HR person would make?
Sure.
So, I mean, I think that's something I can do. Right?
Yeah, no one stops you from doing anything.
Well, I'm just saying, if that's, I think that's very important on the list, in my opinion, our employees here, whether they're voted in employees or appointed by the select board, they have somebody to
Who's doing it
Yeah,
now?
go to.
Like who maintains like the network here? And
So the HR administration is done by Joan. You're talking on IT
IT,
now.
yeah.
IT right now. That's done. We vendored that out to Paragus.
okay,
So I agree with your sentiment. It'd be good for us to make a recommendation on the finances of the human resources
Yes.
person, right? The select board would obviously oversee like the type and responsibilities and the roles for the person or whatnot,
Exactly.
but having a sense of how much it'll impact the budget,
Exactly.
perfectly appropriate for us.
Yeah.
So,
I'll look
town
into that.
administration and finance, the Commonwealth Compact Report. So this, reading it over, it seemed to, it touches on IT, human resources, the charter and everything. So when thinking about this as a separate category, what was the thinking?
Well, I think that the finance director was the thing that we were talking about, coming out of the DOR report from January. We have all, if you think back to the fall town meeting, we had that chart saying that we're gonna be raising the tax rate up by $95. Not the tax rate, but the tax burden by $95. That's a project that David Eisenthal, Linda Sanderson, and I worked collaboratively on, but that took us off of all of the other responsibilities that we have. And would it be better to have somebody who can look at the big picture and the small picture all the time, a dedicated person for that purpose?
Okay. So this line was specifically intended for more of a finance director
No, John
position,
Allen did.
as recommended by the Commonwealth Compact Report.
Right.
Okay.
do we even know if it's valid?
I don't know, this appeared in my email, I'm assuming this was from John Allen, correct? His figures and how he came up with the $95 figure.
So town, this is just, we're talking about the town, the finance director.
Yeah, essentially just the
So
So
finance
I
director
would value them the same as the charter.
as a part of the overall
Mhm.
structure of the government. Yep.
Alright, so this is not.
So a 1,
A 2.
a 2,
This is unsigned. I don't know who it's from or what it represents.
it was in my email.
John Allen sent that around. I think he just did a back of the envelope calculation, and I have no idea if those numbers are valid or anything,
Yeah,
or where he even drew them from.
yeah,
It could be all whole cloth.
could be true.
It could be.
I
Could be
would-
that part of the cloth where the hole isn't.
That actually
I-
came to my personal email. So,
It's not from me.
I know it's not from you.
Let's put it that way.
I have a little smiley face next to your stuff.
So DOR report.
terrible.
I do, he makes me laugh.
What was the thinking behind this line?
Stuff he comes up
I'm
with.
sorry.
So for the DOR report,
What
what
is
was
DOR?
the specific
Department of Revenue?
Yeah, so.
interest item?
So
Are we dead on arrival? I don't
whether,
know.
Give me that too.
whether we should look into a financial director or not, this is something that we've been talking about for years.
Mm-hmm,
Similar. So this is the same essentially as the Commonwealth Compact Report.
Yeah.
Okay.
mm-hmm.
So it's a 2 because it's kind of the same thing. So audit report / management letter.
Okay, and I just sent that to you in tonight's email, so you'll have that. So the FY16 audit, you will have that in your email. Tanya Campbell from Melanson Heath gave a presentation about it, talked about the healthy state of your reserves as of 16.
Yeah, so timeout, I was here yesterday for that
Yeah.
report.
Yeah.
And I don't consider 5 minutes glossing over something a report.
Right. So she's giving a presentation on the report. So the report itself is 61 pages.
Would you like a copy of it?
I
He-
haven't got it
he
yet.
has
I
it.
I just got it today though,
Yeah,
so.
you all. I had hoped that the final version of that report would have been available for last night, but it didn't come in until today, so, but I have forwarded it on to you all.
So it would be
Along
worth
with-
reading through, I know it's 61 pages, to do our due diligence and read through, and if we wanna call him in, if we have really specific concerns, or bring it
Yeah.
up to select board or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, what I see is directly part of the finance committee's responsibilities, right?
And
Ensuring
then
the
there's,
financial well-being of the town.
there's the management letter also, which is one of the reasons why we do these audits. We're required by law to do an annual audit because we have borrowing, but we don't necessarily have to do a management letter. We selected Melanson and Heath because they do management letters, and that's something that's important to us to have them tell us not the million things that we're doing right, but what are the 5 or 6 things that we need to improve. And hopefully we've been able to
And
improve.
you're confident in that ratio?
It's worked out so far.
Okay.
So I'd say this is a 4, just cause it's similar, it's something like OPEB or Hampshire Trust, we should be looking at it and keeping up on it, but nothing that I've heard indicates it's pressing issues. I don't think we have any
Yeah.
5s yet, so. it
Well,
could
once
be
we
fine.
read it, we may find out there's more pressing
enough.
issues.
Yeah,
than-
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you see something in the numbers that looks dodgy, then definitely
You
we
just
need
sent
to
this
talk
to
about
us
it.
in an email?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we just
right
wanna
before you got here, so you
Put a
probably
null
read the
through it
comment.
then? Just not applicable, null for now?
Yeah, I would say no.
Cool.
Okay, planning is your next one.
Thank you. So planning,
That's high.
long-term solutions,
So what is this in reference to? Who's
Yeah.
planning and what?
That's
Isn't
long-term
that capital
solution.
planning that we're talking about?
Well,
Is
no,
what
that
it-
goes back to the 5-year strategic plan
Oh.
that the town is supposed to be putting together. So where do you want the town to be in 5 years?
So,
That
I think it
addresses.
should be right here in Tadley in 5
Oh.
years. So we should work on that, cause we need a plan, a financial plan for 5 years. Cause just doing it in an emergency situation for, getting it done the night before town meeting is really upsetting to me. I'd
Mhm.
like to see
mm-hmm.
a more global plan that we're not chasing our tails 5 minutes before town meeting all the time.
That works for me.
So that should be much higher, that should be like a 1.
It's not always that easy.
Well, I know, but you can at least make an effort,
Absolutely, I agree with you.
and by putting a 1 next to it, we're indicating that we're making an effort.
The long-term solution?
Yeah.
Absolutely. 1.
okay, I agree, 1. So then the other stuff, other,
Other stuff,
It's
that
listed
already gives
other.
you a clue.
sorry, it's listed other, opportunities for consolidation and outsourcing. What specifically was this referencing besides kind of overall structure stuff we've been talking about?
All the things like IT and ambulance and.
Well, you can outsource too, but you can also insource. Okay, so one of the things that we talked about was the assessors. Can they be doing the assessing for some of the smaller towns around here? Could this be a moneymaker for us? Amherst does this for some of the other small towns that abut them.
What abuts us that we'd be interested in
Well,
doing?
we don't need to think in terms of geography, we can
Oh.
think about, okay, so where is the need out there? Particularly when you have the Hampshire Council of Governments that's not doing this kind of regional approach, do we have the capacity to look at regionalizing, either outsourcing or insourcing municipal functions?
You mean like taking care of someone else's
Yeah, for money,
DOT or whatever for money? And
yeah, for money.
So does the
And
select
what
board,
is it that we do so well that we would sell it?
Well, assessing would be one.
Hey,
Can-
if we got an HR person, maybe that could be one
Yeah,
too.
that could be another
Mhm.
one. finance director could be another.
Mm-hmm.
That all makes sense to me, especially if
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
small towns like Hatfield didn't wanna have one, for example,
Right,
and
Mhm.
that we could help on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Hatfield and I are talking about some sort of collaboration, having to do with IT. So this is very nebulous kinds of discussions, but that kind of outreach.
Well, and that's, that's really important, because I mean, when I think of IT, I think of situations like UMass, where they have an IT department that takes care of thousands of computers,
Right,
where we're so small. I mean, how many computers are we actually talking about? Not more than 50 probably.
not counting the school, you're probably right.
So one IT situation could easily handle Hadley and Hatfield, and maybe Sunderland, and maybe Deerfield.
So I
You
mean,
know?
it sounds like there's some juice with this idea.
How many, can I just ask how many people, town employees need new computers? Like, are they all outdated here?
That's what I
they-
hear.
Yeah, they're getting kind of creaky.
And there was even
Some
talk
of
of
them
raiding my
already there.
closet.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, I mean, here's an example, I mean, about storing information too.
Right.
All that information, we talked about the big scanner that, what's the planning board wanted, I think
Yep.
it was.
Right.
But all the departments, a lot of them need some type of scanning or electronic. In the CPA meeting that I was at the other night, we changed, they switched over to the chairperson, all right? So Edwin is gonna not be the chair, and they're gonna have Andy as the chair.
Mhm.
So now they're gonna take all the filing cabinets that's at Edwin's house
Yeah.
and move them to Andy's house.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, wouldn't that be much easier if it was all in the
Why are the
computer?
filing cabinets in anyone's house?
Yeah.
For one, shouldn't they be in this building somewhere?
But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is,
Yeah, I'm doing this la kind of thing right now.
Why is that? That is odd.
Yeah, they should not be at somebody's house. So
They're public knowledge. They should be where they are, right?
yes, yes,
Right? So it should be in this building.
yes,
Wow.
yes.
You gonna make a call about
Uh,
that?
So
Yes.
when they move them,
Thank
get them
you.
to move them here. Or some other agreed
be-
upon
I'll be
location, but not in someone's home.
I hope someone's
You
not
wrote
watching me. Oops.
You're in
All
big
right.
trouble
I
now.
guess so. Oh my goodness. I was just saying, I
You're
thought
not
it
in
would be
trouble.
much easier if we just put it on the computer. But I figured other
well-
departments had the same issue.
Well, you're right. I mean, should be on the computer, and the Commonwealth is pushing towns to get more and more things up on the computer.
But I figured that's just one committee. How about the others? What do all the other committees do?
Where does CPA keep their paperwork?
Well, I think this all feeds into the IT
I just told you.
discussion.
Yeah,
Which we have
that's
rated
CPA
one.
You
Yeah.
were talking about?
in somebody's basement.
Yeah. I got into a big fight with the cultural council because somebody was keeping all the records off-site. So, yeah.
Because
the
if somebody-
Did they learn
needs-
anything from Hillary Clinton?
Let's move on.
Sorry.
I have
So,
another separate
does-
item of business that I need you all to take care of.
Okay.
Try to be quick then. So does HCOG and that discussion around regionalizing, county or no county and the state legislation, does that all kind of go into this line of opportunities for consolidation / outsourcing?
Yes.
Because I don't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I rate this fairly high.
Mhm.
Then 1 through 5, what are we feeling?
2?
I like that.
Yeah, 2.
So removal of operational log jams. Is this just in terms of departmental efficiencies and policy and procedure?
And then it also comes back to the horizontal nature of your organization and the impediments to getting things done and getting decisions and that can stick. So we've had a number of things not happen. Okay, so you make a request for funding through CPA and it doesn't happen. You try to sell a building and it doesn't happen. You try to build a fire substation and look at what's happening. Okay, so this speaks to multiple parties having input into a project in such a way that all you need is a little bit of negative legislative effort and nothing gets done. or that thing doesn't get done.
So I
So-
see this as actually pretty low on the priority list, just because rather than chasing down individual instances of log jams, I want to be having the conversation from the top down about restructuring to make sure these don't happen.
Well, I think that I would make it low too, because if you fix this, that won't
Right.
happen.
Exactly.
Right,
So
yeah,
I
you
wanna-
fix that, the other one goes away, yeah.
It goes away.
Exactly. So that's
So
4 or
5.
5. 5,
Yeah,
cool.
5.
I think it's our first 5.
And inspections? What's the story on inspections?
We have, this is something that the fire chief has brought up, and, that he doesn't have the personnel or the time to cover all the inspections. We have a vibrant commercial, sector. We have, inspections that are required by law. And are we covering all of these bases? This is a life safety issue, and we may be exposing ourselves to
It's also a revenue thing, right, cause he collects
a
money
rev-
for that.
revenue thing, but it's also a liability issue, that if we're not doing life safety inspections and something happens, then that could be a real problem for the town.
So is him hiring more firemen fix this problem?
That would hopefully happen, yes.
Okay, so this is really part of public safety,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
cause if he gets his firemen, then this goes away.
So
Mhm.
similar, I think it's a lower priority because we should address the structure, not the individual instances.
Yes.
I thought he said he does well on the inspections with with himself, and we're talking about the fire department, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, just as one example, okay, so in November, December every year, anybody who's got a liquor license has got to be inspected jointly by the chief, by fire personnel and the building inspector for life safety issues having to do with cooking equipment and exits and all these different things, nightclub issues. If somebody's toned out and nobody's responding to a fire, then that fire personnel has to leave that inspection
All right.
and it's undone.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's kind of what we're talking about, is,
So how do you fix that problem?
You hire more people.
More staff.
yeah,
Or like, do you hire a retired fireman who just does inspections?
that's possible. You know, so that's one
Well,
thing
could,
that's
could
possible.
you, I mean, we have on-call people, can they do it?
Shared
Yeah.
services.
You also need,
Yeah, you've been talking about
you
that a
also
lot.
need
Mhm.
the specific training, okay, so.
That's why I said a retired fireman
Yes,
who would,
so-
doesn't wanna run around in buildings that are burning down, but
Yeah,
may not.
I think that's why it's on the list, is because this is a service that we need to be providing, and
Could we use
we could step up
the
the game.
senior tax rebate program to get someone to do inspections?
That's a possibility, I hadn't thought of that.
So did the fire chief acknowledge this issue and work that into his 4-person, hiring increase that he was asking for?
Yes,
Okay. So I'm confident that if the fire chief has already taken this issue seriously and worked it into his 4-person, then that's what we should be focusing on, is the staff, not,
Same thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the logistics of inspections.
Okay, so that's a 5 for that one.
I agree.
Okay, so that's this list.
We're done.
Well, assessor,
Oh.
last one.
Oh, there's nothing there, it just is assessment.
It was a category, but not an item, so I guess we
Yeah.
can just take it as an item in itself.
yeah,
What
that
was the
was
thinking?
going back to the assessors as a possible resource that we can offer to other towns.
Oh, so that's still part of
That's still a
Outsource-
lot.
outsourcing,
Insourcing.
insourcing,
Okay.
yeah.
So null or 2?
No,
we-
I would think.
No,
No.
okay,
You had some things on the list that we haven't even come to yet for tonight.
yes.
In terms of other business,
Well, you have, can I see that list?
Oh yeah, so just to wrap up, I will consolidate this, send it out to everybody in the digital form, and then we'll have it ready and I can pass it along to select board and yourself with
Yep.
a small little preamble about our thinking behind this is weightiness,
Just the reserve
not
fund thing.
timeliness. So,
The 50,000.
thank you guys.
Thanks.
So you're talking about the reserve fund transfer?
yes,
request?
please. So we have a snow and ice deficit of $10,733.68. And we've requested a transfer from the reserve of that amount. Here's the snow and ice budget.
Do you have more than one copy, or?
I
This is the one copy that I have right now. I can run down and make more
No,
if you
that's
wish.
okay.
No, I follow
And
you.
have a reserve $50,000, you've taken 7,675 out, leaving 42,325 remaining.
This is in
This is in your reserve account,
our board's
Yours.
reserve.
Mhm.
right?
Oh, so you're asking for this $10,733 so they can pay the bill that they already have?
That's right.
Just so I remember, did we vote to keep 50,000 for next fiscal year in our reserves, or did we?
It's
lower
already
that?
down to 42.
No, that's for this year, you got 42.
17, no, we voted to keep the 50.
Yeah, we
Okay,
voted
that's
to
what I was
keep
wondering,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
we
you
voted
have
for next-
50 for
gotcha.
18.
Okay.
Can I ask you, as long as we need,
Sure.
it's kinda like a done deal, you just need to
We just need to
approve
vote it, yeah.
write So, have our numbers increased or decreased
I think you-
as far
chair has
as
to sign
the
it.
outcome
We have
of
to vote
ending
first.
June
Okay.
17, you know, the 2017? Money's coming back from,
Oh, I see. So what kind of free cash are we talking about?
Well,
Yeah.
hang on, can we finish this first? So-
Sure.
I am actually wondering on the year-over-year figures on our, how much we go over for snow and ice removal, if you have them off the top of your head. Is this like high or low in terms of what we're pulling
This
from
is
reserves?
very low compared to
low.
the other
and
years.
last year was, we didn't even go over the year before, right?
No, he was asking
No.
the question, is this typical? Every year we come back and get another 10,000, or is it not typical?
Yeah,
It's
This is not typical.
not typical.
This overage is low compared to other years.
So usually we have to pay more overage.
Yes,
So that
yeah.
means the original budget is wrong.
Right, and that's the reason why we asked for an increase.
But
They
you
were kind
don't
enough
know
to do
based
that
on
for
your
us.
winters,
Yeah.
what,
Well, but I mean, if year over year you're falling short, then your budget's wrong.
Right.
yeah, but I didn't think that we were short last year for snow and ice.
I can't remember last
I
year,
mean,
but
16, right?
with 16 you were definitely over because we had a hell of a winter.
Okay.
I trust we looked at the numbers and
I'm just
voted
trying to
think
accordingly,
of-
I just wanted a quick.
So we need a
refresher.
motion to approve this.
I motion to approve the transfer.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now you can sign.
Thank you.
There was
So
one
just-
year we didn't have a lot of
So,
snow at all and we didn't transfer. I thought that was 2 years ago. I could be wrong.
Yeah, the years blend together. I mean, there was that one year when it just snowed and kept on snowing, and
Yeah, that must have been a catastrophe
yeah,
that year.
we were not in good shape for that one.
Quick
Jerry's gotta
logistics.
sign underneath. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know
I
if
was just
you
wondering,
put
so when it
that-
says a chair sign,
Oh,
does
you
that
put,
mean
four
either
to-
or both have to?
4-0 and one not here, right? We voted 4-0, right? But one of us is not here. So you put
0-0.
0?
Yep.
Okay.
That way
Okay.
you indicate
Right.
that only 4
Put
people
your
were
John
there.
Hancock there.
Right here?
Just
Yeah, under
curious,
names.
is it when there's co-chairs, do they both have to sign or does only one have to sign?
Well, they're both here, so they can
They're
both
both
sign,
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
as long as it,
I just wanna make sure if, if one of you doesn't show up to the meeting, but we still have a quorum, if we can actually do stuff like that.
It's a good
Right.
point. It's a good point, and what we would do is we would just fold into the motion the authorization that you or you sign on behalf of the entire finance committee.
Cool.
We'd name you specifically.
well, and the way it usually works is well, I suppose if one of you were missing, we would still have the three of us, but, so
Yeah.
one of you would have to be here in any case.
Yeah, that's all I was wondering, if one,
'Cause if you
having
both
one
were gone,
chair's
we
good
wouldn't have
enough
a
or something
quorum.
like that,
Right.
that's all.
Can I ask all of you, are you familiar with, are you comfortable with the open meeting laws? Are you knowledgeable of them and what you can and can't do and so forth?
Well, usually we do everything right here, and that satisfies the open meeting law.
Okay. So I was gonna ask you if you could send out the open meeting laws to all of us.
Sure.
And we can look at that again.
Yep.
And I think each department, I can't say for other departments, but I think they all need to look at that again and make sure that we all have an understanding of what it is we can and we can't do. And including even emails, because we're all grouped in emails.
Yeah, you can't chat by email
You can't chat by email,
unless
so,
it's about lemon bar recipes.
yes, there you go.
Or scheduling. I
Or
would
David,
say.
Or scheduling or something. You could send it all to me for
right,
purposes of preparing information for your work, but we can't have a conversation by email this way.
correct.
So that means we literally have to do everything at this table that we do.
Even through our FinCom emails,
Mhm.
Yep.
since
Right.
that, but that's open to the public and everything, we still couldn't one-on-one one.
Like if
You
Tom and I
haven't-
were having a conversation outside here and one of you showed up and there's a 3, we can't do that.
You can talk about baseball,
Right,
you can talk about
Red Sox.
anything not related to Hadley finances. The reason why, even though your email is perhaps more open, is you haven't provided people with notice that you're gonna be doing this, having
Mhm.
this conversation, so
I see.
you've gotta give people notice so that they can either watch or show up.
Mm-hmm,
That's fair. I mean,
Yeah. So we have, I've been working with the planning board on their scanner.
Oh, yeah.
They may defer that until the fall and bring it up as a capital item. So whether I see that or not, I don't know. I was talking to the accountant just 2 days ago about, okay, so we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year. We should be able to see the budgets that are running over. There's small overages at this point. Okay, so the property insurance is over by a couple $100. So there's going to be, I'm going to come back to you and request further transfers, but I'm not seeing anything big out there at this point.
So we're not gonna have a big,
Mhm.
big flood into free cash of returning monies.
Well, I think the $500,000 that I estimated back in January still stands right now, knock on wood. And that was one of the things that we talked about. Is there anything in our numbers that says, whoops, we overshot or undershot? You know, I'm still comfortable with the
And when's-
500,000.
And when will you know, like,
Oh.
when will the books all close so you'll know what we have back?
June
So
30th.
June 30th is the last day to get in revenues.
Mm-hmm.
July 19th is the last warrant. So everything has to be in by, everything for FY17 has to be in by July 18th in order to be put onto the last warrant for the 19th. Once the 19th has come and gone, then we should be wrapping up the end of year everything. And so sometime around mid-August, we should be getting our free cash certified at that point.
Okay, and then we can take care of things that need to be taken care of at that point.
No, we gotta take care of everything for FY17. We have to get that done by the 18th of July. That's our drop
But if
dead.
we don't know what the free cash is, how are we gonna do that?
So we would, yes, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. So the free cash would be used in the fall in order to finish our work on the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll give to the people that we had decided if we have enough in the funding.
Yeah, so the OPEB that we cut back
Mhm.
on, we
Right, we should
restore
refill
that.
the OPEB.
And town employee raises.
Right before we finish, can we quickly just talk about the liaisons? I know that,
I wanted to ask David another question. I
Okay.
understand that you have your meetings at 11 o'clock.
Department head meetings?
Yes, and I'd like to attend one of those.
Sure,
But I'm wanting to know if you can move it to a later time.
sure.
Is that
How-
possible?
How later are we talking about?
Well, most people in their job at 3, between 3 and 4, so how long do your meetings typically last?
Typically last an hour.
Okay, so is there any way you can do it 2 o'clock?
Yeah, I can explore that.
One or, yeah, let's say 1 or 2 o'clock.
All right.
That way I can attend those.
Sure.
which ones are these, Terry? The
The department heads?
department head meetings?
Yes.
So
There's no
then-
way I could ever get in the middle of the day like that.
Well, I can do it, but I want, with my work schedule, I want it to not at 11 dead middle of my day.
Right, you want it at the end of your regular day.
Right, I'm either gonna take the afternoon off.
All right, so
you know,
that
would work
I'll
better
look
for
into
me.
this. I can't promise it right now because.
They don't have to change for every time,
Okay,
just, a couple
Just the
of,
times when you're coming in.
well,
I'll work with you
I
on that.
like to attend them.
Yeah.
So you wanted to talk about liaisons?
Yeah,
This is
I mean,
all,
because she's doing meetings and like, just so we can, and a lot of it will stem back to some of this, so we'll start getting emails
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
get it out there.
I thought I was the DPW liaison.
I thought that would be great, but I don't think we ever put it down.
Okay, so put that down and then
So I was gonna
send
do
an email
school
to
committee.
Marlo.
Okay, school, town, DPW.
Also, Dave, can you find, I guess, obviously I'm missing another
I could do
page, so
public
if you
safety
can send
since
me
I'm doing
that
some of it already.
article,
Wait,
line,
say that again?
section
Public
6
safety,
to me.
since I'm
Yeah.
doing the ambulance and
Yeah,
some
we
of it
might as
already.
well do
I'm
that.
not targeting any department,
Seems like it's
just
something that you like to do.
No.
trying to make everything consistent
Although I do wanna go
across
see the
board.
chief.
Oh, anytime, I would
So
just go
it's
make an
not
appointment and
looked
see him
at
anytime,
negatively
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't stop
By other
that.
Okay,
departments and,
Come on,
Okay.
capital
All
planning.
right,
so
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
right.
pointing fingers at anybody,
sure,
it's just making sure that things are done correctly.
Okay.
got it.
anything else that
Yeah,
needs to
I'm
be
sure you
attended to
did.
that we're not doing?
The, Terry, or, Valerie asked to be on to, anything to do with the senior center, the
She
senior
did.
part.
So that
Did I
would be
hear they're
human
really short?
services.
Are
So,
they not in short?
human services would be,
The building keeps shrinking.
senior center, the Oliver Smith
Well, the problem
Will,
is-
I don't
veterans
feel about that.
services.
Well, the
Um,
problem is though,
Human
they make it
services,
small, don't
Yeah.
okay.
then in 2 or 3
Valerie.
years, they're gonna come back and
Valerie.
say, we don't have enough space.
Is there any ones that we're missing? What do we
What's
miss?
Parks and Rec's fall under?
I
Parks
am
and Rec?
100%
That would be
on that, but
culture
that's
and
not how it was
recreation, so
voted.
that would be library, historic commission,
You know,
park
the
and rec.
barn door is closed and the animals are
So
out.
library,
I wanna volunteer, Terry, but you seem pretty passionate. We're talking about, Parks and Rec and,
I
what are
could
the
do
other ones?
park and rec too, if you want.
Yeah.
Park and Rec,
Park and
library.
Rec,
You've
So-
done the commissioner part.
that's right.
So, just the taxonomy that I'm using is the same as for the budget, so I'm thinking 100 series, 200 series, et cetera. You don't have to do it that way, so when I say culture and recreation, I'm thinking about the, what is it, the 600 series budgets.
Okay,
And what's that include again? So it's Parks and Rec.
Park and rec,
library,
library, historic commission are
Historic.
600s.
Anything else we're missing then, in terms of liaisons?
I don't know, is there?
So, what do you got in the,
I got school, DPW, public safety, capital planning, human services, cultural, I'm on CPA.
mhm. Sounds like a good start.
Alright, and we can find out when their meetings, they're
Yeah.
on the town calendar.
I think
Well,
human
some of them are,
services
like,
also
I
includes
wrote to Heather
HPAD.
to find out where,
Okay.
cause there's nothing for the school committee for this month.
That might
I
be,
thought they changed some of
that might,
June off from
You-
graduation. and-
Really?
HPAC,
Well, but they have a lot of things to do.
can we separate that one? Cause I don't
Sure.
think that's
You can.
something that Valerie would be interested
The
in.
girl from,
So who wants to
The
do
TV?
Hadley
Smith
Media?
who is doing
Hadley
the
Media?
I can
internship,
do that.
and her
Familiar.
grandfather is my PhD advisor.
Well, we already figured all,
Yeah.
IT is going
And
your
she happens
direction.
to go
Yeah,
to
makes
Smith,
sense.
they live in California, but she happens,
I
Smith,
I
she wanted
had
to
a
do a
meeting
summer
with
internship.
the
Smith is usually
Massachusetts
expensive
Film
to
Office.
stay. she's staying with
They
us, and
did a presentation
Julie
about
works in Northampton
promoting
now,
the
so they just go to
film in
Northampton morning, when they
Western
come back
Massachusetts in
Mm.
in the
particular.
afternoon together.
Did you
They're
ever
very
really
much
do
interested in
Yeah.
Hadley
Where is
because
she?
of the
She moved in with the
the movie that
Heisler's.
was done next door,
Who's that?
about the
They're,
biopic about Emily
Yeah,
Dickinson
you know,
called A
I remember
Quiet Passion,
Jeremiah Heisler,
which is coming out
and
pretty
then
soon.
his younger brother.
And I said,
that
you know,
kid's
is there
name.
some opportunity to tie in to the
She's dating
public
one of the
access
brothers.
TV stations that a lot of these towns have? And she
said
said,
so.
oh, sure, so it could be
I'll
that we
leave it
could
when I
get
see
some
it.
really interesting,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, it's all good with
What's,
my house, if you need a place to live, just
Yeah.
stop by.
So now that I have everyone written down, is this something I could send to you and we could get, or maybe when, at a department head meeting, get our names out? Or how are
Sure.
we gonna communicate this to these people so that they put us on the
So,
list?
well, first off, how many of these are actual seats on any committees? I understand the JCPC is, but are there any other committees, school committee? You're
That's
on
not a
that.
seat, he's not on the committee,
I'm not on
school
the
committee,
committee.
he's just going to.
That's an elected position
Yeah.
too.
Right, that's
I'm
right.
I'm the representative of the finance committee and I will go to all the meetings and
Right, okay, yeah. So,
And-
okay, so is there
and I'm
anything
sure they'll
besides
feel like they
JCPC then, that's actually a seat?
want my support, right?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything besides, capital planning that's actually a seat officially in any way?
just CPA.
No,
CPA.
yeah, CPA is,
CPA.
would be the only one that I can think of.
Okay. So sorry.
Like
continue.
the public safety, there's no seat or
Right.
anything like that.
Yeah,
Right, you're
So
just going to them.
getting the word out, what I do is I prepare a memo to all the departments with the liaisons for the select board. I'll simply rework that and get that out to
And
all
add
the
our
departments.
names to
They
the
get-
various
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
So he
Okay.
needs that list then.
I'll
Yeah,
send you that
Send
tomorrow.
it to me by email, that'd be
Mhm.
fine. All right.
Are we all good then?
That was
So-
actually pretty easy.
So
That
just
worked
looking
out
for
pretty
the
well, especially since you took on the
next
school.
meeting and agenda.
Why nobody wanted the school?
No,
No,
Why?
it's difficult. That's the major budget.
So just so we can think ahead for next meeting's agenda, so I think it'd be worthwhile to go through the other list of what we would like to prioritize in terms of timing and where we should focus our efforts.
Okay.
And then as a part of that, after that, is there anything that we can identify right now would be very worthwhile to have on our next agenda? in
Then we
ter-
want to
with these
invite-
priorities?
Didn't you want to invite people in for next time?
Capital,
We wanted to invite in, which I can, now my head is starting to spin
Uh,
around.
Capital. I don't necessarily know if we need these right away. We talked about
Joe
OPEB
Shea,
and Joe Shea, but that's not something that we needed.
no,
he's coming next week and he'll give a
Oh.
presentation to the select board, which
Well, maybe we'll just listen to that.
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful if you
Yeah.
did.
So yeah, if there's anyone we want to invite, essentially what's pressing now that we should put on our agenda for next meeting?
My head's going around.
I mean, the Capitol I think is interesting, and I think we should invite them. But I don't necessarily whichever one they could make, right?
Sure.
So it depends on their
Do we wanna have-
availability, but
Do we want to have override options sit down with someone? Who would be a good person to?
Well, that's going to be part of the broader. I'm sure the select board wants.
Yeah.
We talked about a tri-board meeting for
I'm
that.
I'm trying to set that up for the 21st and have Terry.
The problem
Williams
with
from
the
Department
the
of
select
Revenue.
board is everything seems to get glossed over very quickly, and it's like it's not substantive.
well, maybe we want to focus on long-term
You know,
the
to me-
strategic plan start.
If you're going to talk about override options, that
Yeah.
should take a person like a PowerPoint and at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Not
So I
Oh.
think we do it for the 21st with the tri-board. We meet on the 22nd, so if we're unhappy with how thorough it was,
then we can.
we say for the 6th of July, let's try to get, or whenever he can,
Yeah.
Right.
or if he just provides us more materials and we talk about it, something like that, we'll decide. So I think that makes sense.
Right. And there's a very good manual by the Department of Revenue on the mass.gov website having to do with overrides, and it's written for people to use. It's kind of like a guidebook, and there are many different kinds of overrides, straight overrides, debt exclusions, capital exclusions, pyramid, menu forms, so different ways of slicing and dicing this and making it do what you need it to do.
So can I ask you a question
Sure.
based on that? So we always talk about override, but doesn't the tax mill rate get adjusted every year?
Yes.
And so if that
Well,
goes,
It gets adjusted by the decisions that you make about budgets coupled with money that comes in that you can use to offset the mill rate, and then changes in value of the property.
right, but it fluctuates.
Yes,
So why couldn't it fluctuate to cover new firemen?
because you have a Proposition 2.5 cap that you cannot exceed, and we're right up at that levy limit.
Oh, so
You're-
we're already at our 2.5.
You're at your 2.5 all the time, so that's the reason why we spend so much time making the budget balance, because you don't have excess capacity within your levy limit to raise the additional money for the,
All right, so that mill rate fluctuating is stuck at, can't go higher than 2.5% of the total.
By
plus new growth, plus debt exclusions from prior years.
Okay, so firemen don't fit in any of those categories.
Not,
So every budget goes up by 2.5%? That's not what I saw in the budget book.
right, so remember that the Proposition 2.5 means that your tax levy goes up by 2.5, but then you can add the value of the new growth, all the new construction. Plus, if you've made any decisions about prior debt and excluded that debt from the limits of Proposition 2.5, that gets added too. So your tax revenue has increased by about 4% in this budget, because it's not just the 2.5%, and then that's it. It's 2.5 plus new growth plus these other things.
But in all the different line items, I didn't see a 4% increase
Correct.
in nearly any of them, so
Right.
where's that money going?
Well, I mean, the whole budget overall went up by the same, by about, what was it, 3%. But that includes the 4% increase in taxes.
Okay. Alright.
So I guess maybe we don't have to prioritize anything for next time. I think we'll have plenty to talk about in terms of this list again, but what we're gonna work on.
Okay,
And then obviously other items that come up.
and
No
whatever
more
you
data.
have.
Yep.
And you're not gonna be at the next meeting,
I will be at the next meeting.
okay,
So just the July ones that I'm not gonna be at.
okay.
You're not allowed to take time
I am allowed to take time off.
How many
think-
vacation weeks do you
off. I
get?
motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.